Hello and welcome. You're watching Literati. I am Judith Atibi. Now this is Literati, and it's a show where stories leave beyond the page, where we meet the authors who challenge our thinking, stir our emotions, and remind us who we are. Today's guest is a woman who needs no introduction to millions of readers around the world, but I will try my best to introduce her. She gave us Kambili. She gave us Ifemelu, she gave us Olana, and she broke our heart with Kainene. She gave us stories that made us feel seen, made us ache, and made us proud. She gave us language for silence and courage for questions. She is a writer, a cultural force, a literary architect, and a voice that redefined how the world reads Africa. And now, after 12 years, she returns to fiction with a novel that is as intimate as it is ambitious, Dream Count. Dream Count is a multi-layered novel that unfolds early into the COVID-19 lockdown, weaving together the stories of 4 women across continents, class, and emotional landscapes. There's Chiamaka, also known as Chia, a Nigerian travel writer stranded in America during the lockdown, whose isolation forces her to confront ghosts of intimacy and ambition. We also have Zikora, a sharp-tongued Washington, D.C. lawyer navigating betrayal and an unplanned pregnancy. There's also Omelogo, once a banker, now a late-blooming academic in Nigeria, who confronts the hypocrisy of a system she once belonged to. And of course, there's Kadatu, a Guinean immigrant and housekeeper whose harrowing encounter with sexual violence propels the book's most urgent moral questions. Together, the voices of these 4 women, shifting, unfiltered, tender, and enraged, illuminate the quiet devastations of patriarchy, class tension, racial injustice, and creative paralysis. Dream Count is about memory, justice, sisterhood, and the silence that hums between the words we say. Critics have called it a chorus of reckoning, a feminine epic, and a quiet political thunderclap. But one thing about this book, every reader agrees that it is a conversation starter. And so today, we are lucky to continue that conversation with the one, the only, the iconic, the incomparable, the one known as Chief, the Odeluwa one of Africa, the one and the only Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
That is such a lovely introduction, Judith. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I have to say I am honored that you are here, and it's my pleasure to have you here. You do not know, but this is a dream count for me.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. No, but really, that lovely introduction, and I think it's such an insightful way of thinking about that novel, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, I have to start with you. I absolutely love Dream Count. I love the women, every single one of them. I may not be a huge fan of Chiamaka, but I love the book so much as well. And I also love the way you portray their relationships, the intimacy, the men, and also the experiences as well. And so we have to start at the beginning for me to ask, was it lockdown? You know, what was the first thing that sparked it for you? The first image or sentence or tension? What was that question that led you to say, Dream Count, and why the decision of these 4 voices, these 4 women?
All right, so before I respond, you have to tell me why you're not such a fan of Chia. Or will you tell me later?
Oh gosh, I can't. I have to. If I say I would give away the book. Okay.
But okay, can I tell you that a Nigerian reader said to me, that Chia, does she have mental problem? Would you agree with this reader?
All right, no. Look, maybe the two, not too much on my girl, right? So I think Chia she's the glue, all right?
Yes,
and she bonds all her friends. She is the glue,
yes.
and she's very open, and that can only come with the privilege and the privilege that she has.
Yes.
She's unassuming. She's
Yes.
it's like, girl,
Yes.
you need to stop.
Yes.
Okay, so this is wide-eyed naivety that comes with privilege,
Yes.
and
Yes.
access and wealth. And I think
Yes.
that's where it is. So that's why I'm
Yes.
like, no,
Yes.
I can't relate to that. You know what I mean?
Yes. No, I hear you, and I think that's very fair. But I also think it just seems to me that Nigerian readers probably will not have as much patience for Chia as maybe some other readers would. And I completely understand that. And I can tell you that sometimes I didn't have much patience for Chia.
Gosh.
But anyway, I love all my characters. No, it wasn't COVID. It was, so I've had, when I finished Americana, I knew that I wanted to write a book about women. So it's kind of been in my, not actually just my consciousness, not just my subconscious. And I call it when the spirits call me. When they start to call me, which is when the story starts to form, I don't plan my novels. So I have a vague idea, I have a feeling, a mood, but I don't actually know what will happen. And so at some point I thought I would write about 3 women, but I didn't know it was going to be women's voices, and I wanted different women, and I wanted to write about, contemporary women, and I kind of knew I wanted to write about just women's lives, women's bodies, women's dreams, all of that. And I had this in my head for a long time, and I could not write because I had that horrible thing called writer's block. And then when I finally started writing, really, actually, it was the first sentence. So if you ask me what was the first thing that came to you, it was the first sentence. And so I think everything came from there.
And it wasn't lockdown, necessarily lockdown. I mean.
No, because I actually wasn't writing during lockdown. I started writing this after lockdown. Lockdown was a very difficult time for me because my father died, a month and a half into lockdown.
Yeah.
So I experienced lockdown, really, and COVID as just a time of just very strange grief and this kind of sense of denial because I couldn't travel. I was in the US, my father was here in Nigeria. And the airports were closed, you couldn't go anywhere, and so it was very surreal. So I knew my father had died. I saw him, on the video call, lying there. But I still kept thinking maybe it's not really real.
Yeah, that denial that comes with,
because I couldn't go.
At first, you can't accept it.
Yes.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
I just spoke to this person 2
Yes.
days ago.
Yes.
We were laughing last night.
Yep.
What do you mean he's gone?
Mine was exactly that. The day before. So that was COVID for me. But I think, the question about COVID, I think, is because COVID is such a unique, especially lockdown in particular, and so we experienced history, and for a storyteller, it's gold.
One of the character in the book said, we all went, at least I went through a plague, don't bother me. I can't remember, I think it was a Melogo that said that in the book, and I was like, that is a quote. Don't bother me, I went through a plague. Yeah. I should put that on my bio.
The fact that we survived, I'm not even sure I sometimes feel that lockdown did something to so many people, for good and bad. It made us think about our lives, but also I think it opened wounds and all of that. But for a storyteller, just as a literary device, lockdown was just, you cannot but use it.
You chose 4 voices and 4 women, and they're very vast and different, and across borders and class, most importantly, right? One is middle class, one is very upper, echelon, and then there's another, who is very much from a different landscape, completely different part of the continent, but still West Africa, and that's Kadatu. So, what bond them together for you when you're writing these 4 women?
That's actually an interesting question. When I was writing them, I think, the class differences were important to me. I think that we often talk about race and biological sex, as we should, but I don't think we talk enough about class. And I think that I really think that class plays a huge role in how we look at the world, right? But also I'm very interested, I've always been interested in cross-class connections. And I think there's a part of me that's and I think this is also true in other things I've done. So in Half of a Yellow Sun, the soul of the book is the houseboy.
Yes.
And I think in general, we don't expect the houseboy to be the soul of a novel. And so I think there's always been a part of me that it's not my class. I'm fortunate enough to have, sort of relative class privilege but I've always been interested in kind of the stereotypes of just because in the end, it's really luck. right? It's the good fortune of birth. And so just because a person didn't have that doesn't necessarily mean that we can make other conclusions about their abilities. So I think, so Kadatu is very different because she's not formally educated like the others, but I think there's a wisdom to her that in some ways the others lack. But at the same time, I didn't want to make it a kind of romanticized wisdom. You know, that sort of, you know, the poor person is the noble one. Because I think that also is very dehumanizing.
Yes.
So I think what binds them together in some ways actually is Kadatu.
Kadatu?
I think so.
Not Chiamaka.
I mean, Chia is the obvious glue. But when you really sort of sit back and think about it, what is it?
They all agreed on one person.
Yes.
They all agreed on
Yes.
one person, and
Yes.
they all would put all their differences
Yes.
aside for that one woman,
Yes.
and that was
And those
Kadatu.
differences really existed. You know, those, there's a bit of
There's a
cattiness
clash.
between.
Now, critics have called this book your quietest novel. And yeah, in air quotes, and some have even said it's most emotionally loaded book that you have. I know.
I don't read reviews, so I don't even know what you're talking about. It's all news to me.
So, writing all this through women, there's a lot of emotions on the current that's going through that, and there's an intensity as well, especially with Kadatu's story.
Yeah.
And so, how was that like for you? I mean, dealing with all that you've had to deal with in the last 5 years, from 2020 and now, and being able to write this for women, and how emotionally loaded, as these critics describe. How was that like for you, navigating it?
Emotionally loaded. I think that's fair, actually. I think this is my most vulnerable book. And I think it's because I'm just a really different person. I'm not the same person who wrote Americana. When I wrote Americana, I was much more, I had more certainty about everything, you know?
Yeah.
And I think partly is, you know, I was fortunate. I had a happy childhood. I had wonderful parents. I grew up with the sort of sense of assurance about my place in the world. I didn't question whether or not I needed to have a voice. I had one, you know. My parents encouraged that. And then my parents leave us, and just in the most really devastating way, and everything really just shifted for me. I changed. I really am different. I'm different about how I think about the world. I'm different. My sentences are different. So I think, of course, the novel is different. And I think navigating grief as I did and changing also made me think of literature in a different way. I find that the books that even as a reader, I find that now I'm looking for more psychology in novels. I mean, story is fine, but now I'm looking for what's deeply inside of characters in a way that I didn't before. And I think this novel is also about that. I'm, you know, I think more vulnerable, more open, less sure.
Yes, sure.
Less sure. Grief can do that to you.
Yes,
you know,
it does.
suddenly you realize, my God, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know how much time we have.
Right.
You know, and you know, in good and bad ways. And I think for me, at least, that, you know, this novel is. I love all my books, but this one is different.
It is different. It is different. And also, how different it is also, all of your novels are very lineal, so to speak, right? Whether it's from Half of a Yellow Sun, Americana, or my favorite of all time, Popular Viscose. I love
really?
that. I've read it 700 times.
Oh,
you joking?
really?
That is my put to bed, you know, book. I feel like Efemelu is my child. It's who I was as a child. Not really.
You mean Kambili?
Kambili, I beg your pardon. How wide-eyed she was.
Yes.
Not wide-eyed, but also how observant she was as a
Yes.
child.
Yes.
That's who I was. I was very observant as a child. So reading that characteristics is like, oh my God. But
I wrote your story.
yes, you did. So, you know, very linear, but not with this one. This flashback, you know, it's not linear. It goes back and forth and back and forth. Was that difficult for you this time around? How were you able to manage that and still stay at the core of what you were? Did you build the structure chronologically and then write the story?
No. I wrote it as it is in the book. And I have to tell you, this dear friend of mine said to me, he said it could have been confusing, but it wasn't. And I was thinking, are you trying to say something?
No, it wasn't.
No, I think, and I'll tell you why. It's also because, even as a writer, there are times when you need a break, if that makes sense. And because I wanted to have a multiplicity of voices, I didn't want to be stuck in one voice for too long. And it also helped me. So Chia starts the book and Chia ends the book.
Yes.
And when I met Chia later, in some ways I had changed because I had seen the other characters. And so I think the Chia we meet at the end is slightly different because I felt slightly different. And I think if I had written Chia in one go and then cut it up, I think it would have been different. So there's kind of the process for me is also really part of the storytelling in some ways. So, and partly because I don't plan anything. I have friends who map out things. You know, they're writing a novel and they map out this will happen, this will. I can't do that. If I did that, I would lose the magic.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't want to write anymore because I'm like, I already, why do I have to?
Yeah.
It would be like filling in the blanks, but with my method and my process, it's kind of open-ended. And so when I was writing the first Chia, I kind of knew I would come back to Chia, but I wasn't sure what the hell would happen. You know, actually, the ending of the novel, which came to me and felt right. But if you'd asked me when I started the novel whether I would end that way, I probably would have said no.
Yeah. I was also thinking, I was like, Chimamanda just has to do what she normally does.
No, but this is different. No, people, you know, do you know how many Nigerians have harassed me about Kaine? This is
Chimamanda, you still did this. You still did this.
No.
I wanted justice. I mean, you said it. You literally said, "Why is America's justice always about money?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Chimamanda, just make it end that way. Don't make it about money. Make it about justice.
No.
But of course,
let's try and be fair.
Okay, I'm going to be fair.
Okay, try and
I
be
can't.
fair.
You have my weak point.
Because the problem with I can't tell you the number of people who harass me even now about Kaine and half of the Yellow Sun. Everywhere. I mean, where was I recently? And this woman who usually it's Nigerians, and where's Kaine? But she was, I forget what she just came to me and said, "Will you tell me what happened to Kaine?" And I'm like, I don't know. But I kind of thought to myself, maybe I should do something a little less dark. This is it.
Little less dark. Okay. I mean, before we go on this break, I have to, another way of talking about it, was any character's voice the hardest to write for you? And you know, was it, or perhaps one that surprised you the most? You already said that how Chiamaka ended sort of surprised you, but was there one when you were fleshing out that was so difficult?
Kadatu.
Yeah,
Kadatu was, and I think it's also because I felt, I don't want to say a sense of responsibility because it might sound...
Isn't it a sense of responsibility given your author's note?
I suppose so. I mean, part of the reason I don't like to say that is that I don't want to feel, I think that art is so important and freedom and all of that, and I don't want to feel as though I set out to, you know, do something, but I kind of did.
Kind of did.
Yeah. So Kadatu was, I wanted to get that balance right. You know, I didn't want her to be this noble figure, but on the other hand, I did want her to be a remarkable human being, but still human. So I rewrote her quite a few times. And then I think it's difficult when you're writing from research because I don't know very much about Guinea, so I went out to learn.
I was going to ask about that. How was that like? Because and I think this is the first time, or correct me if I'm wrong, first time you're writing about an African or West African country, or any country for that matter, from the eyes of the character, and it's from their home. You know, the way you write it, it feels like home.
Yeah.
How was that like researching that?
Research is always, so you do the research, and then what I've learned is you have to step away from it because otherwise you feel like you have to use everything you found, which will create bad fiction. And, you know, so I wrote the first draft, and then I sort of went back to see if it made sense from the perspective of a person from Guinea based on my research, right? And I talked to people, and you know, I read quite a bit about Guinea, much more than I suppose I would ever have normally. But I talked to people, and I think it's always really important to make research a kind of, you know, have many prongs. And talking to women who were about Kadatu's age, but not quite of her class, because I didn't know any who were, you know, the women I knew were women who were in college in the US or who were doing second degrees. But I would ask them about the women who worked for their families, right? And so just little, and it wasn't so much about Kadatu's internal life, because that I felt I could do. It was about the external things, you know, what
the food, the smell,
how did she dress?
Scent,
what
sense,
did she not like eating?
sounds.
Yes. What did she think about the food you ate? that kind of thing.
And I mean, the commentary that's also going with the characters, I cannot. I love this so much. But also, why did you have to come for Nigerian women and how we dress and look now?
Somebody cannot write novel again. Did I know? No. I think it's Chia who does that. But no.
Sometimes I'm like, Chia, you need to stop. I don't know what you're doing.
But I have to say, as I think that Nigerian women are the best dressed in the world.
Yes.
And I also think that the best dressed women are in the bus stops in Lagos. They're the best dressed. They have originality. I'm not talking about the designer bag carrying people. No. I love when I'm driving past bus stops, I'm like, my God, that is stylish.
You're like a style.
Style. It's actually a good thing. I find that one of the things about Nigerians is we have a difficult time with accountability. We have a difficult time with even just saying I was wrong.
Yes.
We have a really difficult time with it. I remember one of the first events I did after I published Purple Hibiscus, so many years ago, and a dear friend of mine, it was here in Lagos, and someone asked me a question and I said, I don't know. And afterwards he said to me, how can you say you don't know? Even if you don't know, just say something. And I was so struck by that. And I said, but I don't know. And, we need to learn this kind of, I was wrong, I don't know. Because I think in some ways it is in fact a strength. If you acknowledge that you don't know something, then perhaps you will learn it. But if you talk rubbish when you don't know it, So
it is what it is.
But I think, no, but really, to your question, no, I'm not torn. And I think it's because it comes from love.
It comes from love.
Yeah.
And it is all love here, right here on News Central Television. It is Literati, the iconic Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is here with me. We're talking about our latest novel, Dream Count. It follows the journey of 4 women, their voices, their story, the emotional landscape that connects them all. And we've been talking about the writing journey and just everything in between. Let's go on a short break, shall we? When we return, this time I might be switching gears and putting her on the hot seat. Have I not putting you on the hot seats this whole time?
Because I'm going home.
After the break, stay with us.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting. And this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, the stories that put Africa first.
Jasiri is where the conversation starts. We amplify diverse voices and challenge narratives.
Bringing societal issues to the fore. This is where everyone has a voice.
That perception that I have your type at home, actually 4 of your type at home, it starts to shift just because you are like, well, this my type is right here.
Exactly.
We break barriers and bridge generational divides.
So who is going to make Gen Z believe that it is giving?
I love it. She said it.
To speak your native language.
Silence is not an option.
We are unconventional, but unique. Brace yourselves.
I had no holes in my ear until I was 14 years old.
And now how many do you have?
I have holes in places you don't want to.
Join us weekdays at 10 a.m. right here on News Central.
Every great day starts with a great morning, and at Breakfast Central, we understand the importance of starting your morning right.
From 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., our team is dedicated to delivering a one-of-a-kind breakfast experience with vibrant conversations, detailed analysis, comprehensive reports, and on-location updates.
Breakfast Central is for you, giving you more time for breaking news, more insights, and more of the stories that matter to you.
Start your morning the right way. Breakfast Central, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday.
This is Literati on News Central Television. Today we are joined by a woman whose words have carved space for a generation, whose pen has painted girlhood, grief, identity, and injustice with equal grace. She is a literary force whose work has shaped how the world reads Nigeria and how Nigeria reads itself. Writer, feminist, cultural icon, the incomparable and the indelible Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Judith, I think I want more of this. I mean, can we maybe every morning, can you call me and just hail me like this?
Employ me. I will do it for free.
If this happens, I'll write 10
like, do you
books.
know who you are? Look at yourself in the mirror. Brown eyes, full hair. Nobody has hair like you. What are you talking about? This is not extension, real hair. What do you mean? Meanwhile, mine is thin, edges thinning. She's got edges.
No. I actually don't really have edges.
No, please. No,
So,
no, I'm hailing you. No, you don't say the truth.
Okay. Let's get back to you.
And then look, Dream Count has raised a very profound question, right? And is what do we choose to forget in order to keep surviving? How do you personally reckon with that question?
That's very heavy. You know what, and again, I think this is the new me, the post-grief me.
Is there really a post-grief you? Is there really one?
Yeah, I'm quite different. And my life has changed as well. The friends who are no longer friends.
Yeah.
And for that, I feel grateful. And
what did you guys do to my Chimamanda?
No. I think that, but also, you know, how one responds to grief. There are people, you're so angry. I mean, I was.
Yeah, but grief is anger.
I was so angry. I still am. And so I think, you know, I think I reacted differently to things. And it's also interesting how somebody responds to your loss can suddenly just become this exquisite source of rage. You know, and in some ways it's unfair, but grief is unfair. It's not very reasonable to expect somebody to understand the depth of just pain you're in. But when they don't, you blame them for it. So I did that quite a bit. So the post-grief me, I think has made peace with many things, but it's also meant, when you think about what are the things that you let go of in order to survive, maybe for me it's not about listing the things I've let go of, but it's about recognizing that we grow and we change, and that we owe ourselves the responsibility of just moving with that change, even when it causes, you know, some remorse, some regret, you keep going. And I've learned that.
Just have to keep going.
Yes. Yeah.
Now let's get to the funsy part. It's the men. The men in this book, readers have pointed out that the male characters in Dream Counter are mostly either absent, disapproving, or disappointing, I beg your pardon, or damaging. And to me, and to that I say, that's not all men, just saying. But
But you know, I honestly don't know why people have said this. I don't think that's true at all.
I'm a woman. Yeah, I mean, besides my dad, but like, who's counting?
No. No, first of all, okay, let's keep it to Dream Count, okay? Otherwise, you'll have to tell me more.
No, we can't do it now, okay.
You'll tell me more later.
Yes, I will. I don't have a choice. I say you have my weak point.
But I think, you know, so I jokingly say, well, what? There's nothing, they're men. You know, as men, they're fine. But more seriously, these are men we see from the point of view of the women.
Right.
And I think it's a very truthful kind of telling. I think many women recognize this kind of telling. If we had the story from the man, it might be a different story.
Right.
But this is from the woman's point of view.
And that was a query. That was this a deliberate choice that you chose to center the women and not give voices to the men?
Of course. Novels are always very subjective. Right? So, Chinua Achebe chose Okonkwo. I chose my women.
Is this your new form of feminism, or is this dream count adding to your feminism that you are decentering men and? I mean, there's this new term of decentering men.
No, and I don't. Yeah, even that whole. I'm not very. I really do not like this sort of social media language. I think words have lost their meaning. Center. Why? And actually, Omeloga in my novel says, why is center a verb? When did that happen? No, but I'm not. This is a book about women, right? But I don't really think it's a book only for women. I think it's a book for men as well. Because I think that men might benefit from just being more familiar with women's stories, And I think that there are men who are, somebody said to me, all the men are just really not great except for the fathers. And I don't know if that says something about my own psyche, I adored my father. But no, in general, no, it's not about, and I don't like to think of this book as feminist. I'm a writer and a feminist. I'm not a feminist writer. I think you could make a case for this novel not even being feminist. I mean, you could say there's too much time spent on men, for example. You could say that many of the women are really not that impressive in terms of being perfect, strong feminists.
Yeah. But isn't that what feminism really is about? That all women can be women and choose to be who they want to be.
Yes, but I could see how someone might make an argument that when you have a woman who in some ways allows herself to be in a very
unfulfilling,
yes, an emotionally abusive relationship, that maybe that's not the best. But my point is, really, I'm not setting out to write feminist literature. When I write my essays and things, I'm doing feminism. But here, really, no. So when you say, is this your new feminism? It's not.
But first of all, congratulations. Which I'm about to ask you my next question. Congratulations on the twin boys.
Thank you.
When I saw that in The Guardian, I said, I love her so much. Look at the way she surprised me. Oh my God. Oh God, Ejima. Oh my Ejima.
Yes,
that should be your sign out.
Yes.
I just said, well, thank you so much for coming. Oh my Ejima.
Yes.
That's the end.
Yes.
But you now have boys, right? And Dear Jawele, a manifesto on feminism was about, telling your friend who has a daughter, how to be. Now that you have sons, what's that going to look like?
I'm thinking of it. I think I might write one to myself. Here's how you should raise your sons. But I should say, we have, and even with my daughter, I was like that. I wanted to be very careful. I wanted to get it right. But you can do everything right, and your child still turns out not to be what you wanted, right? But I think, and I'm happy and very excited about raising boys. I kind of raised my nephew, so I know how boys work, and he is one of the loveliest young men you can ever meet. He's just had a baby with his wife. He's just, honestly, I adore my nephew. So I think I'll send a clip of this to him. So Tokes, I love you, love. I'm so proud of you, and I love Nicole.
Just so you're very lucky, Tokes, to have an aunt like this. World icon.
He's fantastic.
I'm jealous.
I'm sure if you told him that, he would roll his eyes and be like, she's just my aunt.
Yeah.
That guy is so unimpressed. Anyway, I tell him come to my things. He's like, oh no. And then I tell him somebody famous is coming. Then he comes. Very useless.
Very
boy.
Disrespectful. Very disrespectful. No, Tokes, we can't accept that. So you need to start. What do you mean?
You need to meet him and talk to him. But no, really, seriously, I think, because in thinking about feminism, right, and obviously for me it's about women, because that's the problem. It's women who've been excluded, and so if we want to solve the problem, women have to be at the center of things. But men also matter, right? Men matter. And my feminism has always been one in which I think it's so important that we recognize we share the world with men, and we're going to have to find a way to coexist where both are equal. We're not there yet. So for me, I think I want my boys to be emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
I find that is not it's not a trait that is common with men.
No, it's not.
And I've wondered why. I've wondered, is it nature or nurture? We can't control nature, but we can control nurture. So I think we can do the best we can to teach them emotional intelligence. I think there are many men who are lonely, who might not even admit to that loneliness because they don't have outlets. They can't really talk properly and deeply about how they feel. They have to do the hard man with their friends, with their family, and I think there's a lot of pressure that men have in a society like ours. There are many privileges, of course, but also there's a lot of pressure, and I think that can be damaging for men. So anyway, I'm going to teach my boys emotional intelligence. And I'm going to teach them that women do not belong to them. And I say that because I think there's a kind of natural assumption that, boys at some point get into their heads that somehow women's bodies are theirs. So as though they kind of have a right, an entitlement, but really for me, emotional intelligence and just a kind of emotional openness. I think that so many men have trouble expressing emotion.
They have a lot of trouble.
So many.
I don't know if it's lack of vocabulary or just the openness or the approach of it.
It's all of those things. It's all of those things. And I think there are men who are violent, and this is not, of course, to excuse violence, but there are men who are violent because that's the only outlet that they think is somehow socially acceptable,
Or the best way to express.
Yes. And that's damaging for everybody.
It is.
So my boys, who, by the way, are so lovely.
I can imagine.
And they're sort of toddling around now, but we've already started. But my family is very expressive. We do lots of hugs and kisses. We are constantly hugging, and I'm going to raise them that way. And my brothers are that way. My mother raised us that way.
12 years we waited for a book from you. 12 years you kept us waiting, and in that time you've been called many things: an icon, controversial, essential, misunderstood. I have to ask, did that weight of the expectation of this book, or the backlash from all of your takes and essays and who you really are shape how you approached the way you're writing this time around, a decade after coming back? It didn't.
Nope.
Not once. I trust you.
But it's not because I'm not Superwoman. I'm vulnerable. Some things people say I find very hurtful, but I will never let that shape what I do. It's not worth it, right? I've always felt that I can only be who I am. And I like to joke and say that I had a lot of love, so I'm not campaigning for anybody's love. If it comes, it's wonderful. If it doesn't, I'm fine, I'll sleep well.
You've been in the center of a lot of conversation and controversy around, and also conversation around, cancel culture, gender identity, public disagreement. How's it affected how you approach storytelling as well?
It hasn't. Well, it has in the sense that I'm interested, for example, in writing fiction about this present age of that expression, cancel culture. Well, in the US, it's been co-opted by the right. So, but it's a real thing,
right?
And I think that even people who are unwilling to talk about it are afraid of it. America has become so tribal, so you have to be with your tribe. And if you step outside of the lines that your tribe has kind of inscribed for you, you get into trouble. And I find that to be just the most horrible way to live. It's very authoritarian, but it doesn't want to call itself authoritarian. And so I'm interested in that. I'm interested in how that affects people mentally, emotionally. But in terms of my own experience, I think one of the things that's been very helpful for me is that I don't read. I don't read reviews, I don't read things about myself. I haven't since Purple Hibiscus. And I think once you start, so now I just can't, because so much time has passed. If I went back to reading reviews, and because I'm a bit of a, perfectionist, I would then feel compelled to read everything, because I'd be like, no, I missed something and that's not okay. And then so I won't. I don't read about myself. And so that helps. If there are things I need to know, there's someone to tell me.
Yeah.
But what I'm told, there's noise about so and so, and I'm like, well, okay. But I think also because I never set out, I don't set out ever to create controversy. I say things that I think are important, and sometimes they're considered controversial, but it's never the aim, because it's not me, it's not a thing, it's not even a thing I like, right? I don't, but I'm also very, I'm not reluctant to say what I think. And I suppose that comes with the territory.
Yes. I think it's also the intolerance of difference as well, right?
Yes.
That happens with social media.
Yes.
I think that intolerance where another person has a different view and a different perspective and saying that out loud, people are like, ooh, why would you say that?
And suddenly everything is moralized. It's not just I disagree with you, it's you're an evil person.
Why would you say that?
Yes.
Such evil words.
Yes, you're a murderer, as I was called. And yes, it's never fun, and I think I think it's important to talk about that in an honest way, because saying, oh, I don't care, it doesn't bother me, is a lie, right? It's not fun, but it's not going to change the way I do anything.
You have, let's talk about the relationships in this book, right?
Yeah.
We saw all kinds of relationship going, a marriage that ended in death, you know. We saw a relationship that seemed to be all glossy and then an abandonment out of nowhere. We saw, you know, a very short flinged relationship with this, you know, woman who is just views men and like, there's no affinity, there's nothing. It's like, yeah, okay, it has ended, moving on, next please, you know. That's what it was. And seeing all that relationship and the way you portray them, I feel like the younger women may not understand it now, because I understood perfectly. Just reading it, I was like, yeah, I've seen this type, I've seen that type. So it was like, oh, how did Chimamanda do it? Like, how did you know how to, you know, navigate and be able to document these relationships? But most importantly, it was one relationship that stood out for me. It wasn't necessarily it's a friendship per se, but at one point, it's just.
I think I know where you're
going. Yeah, is this erotic? Is it not? Like, what exactly is going on here? You know, I mean, you've never been able to shy from LGBTQ, yes, you know, and you know, homosexuality, you know, in your books. But this time, seeing the way you wrote this, Chimamanda, Miss Adichie, give me something. What were you trying to do?
I don't know, Judith. You read the book. You tell me.
Okay.
But tell me, no, but I just want to go back. So you said something. You said you don't think younger women would understand the relationships?
Yeah. So
what? Yeah.
The yearnings of this women, they didn't start to feel angsty until they were until the 30 was looming, right? And I'm smack in the middle, right? I'm just slowly toeing towards 40, and I've seen it all. You know, I've got to that point when it's like you're itching, and then now I've accepted it. The fate is like, whatever you bring, world, I'll take it. Mother Nature, give me whatever it is. I'm just gonna live life the way it is, you know. And I'm at that point of acceptance. With Emelogo is at that point, and I've seen women with the resentment that Zikora feels, and you know, this wide-eyed, still very dreamy, waiting for that love that will be as Chiamaka. So I've seen these women, I know these women, they're in my lives. So I think that's what I mean by saying that I don't think
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Do you think
I hope that they see it as I was going to say a warning, but no. Maybe I don't think I hear it, and I you know, I think I'm reluctant to agree, even though I think you have a point. And I'll tell you why. Because I think I want to push back against the idea that one has to necessarily have experienced something in order to get it or understand it in a story. Because, you know, there's so many books I've read, I haven't experienced those things. But sometimes I think what literature can do is it can give you insight into somebody else's experience. So I'm hoping that maybe they'll be kinder to older women. Because they need to understand that the pressures are crazy.
It's different.
No, it really is. And you know, and I have a lot of sympathy for women who, I mean, I think that's obvious in the novel, a lot of sympathy for women who, you know, get past sort of, I think it's maybe 32. You're past 32 and society just starts to throw things at you. And I find it very unfair, and I don't think that there's enough understanding and sympathy for women in those positions, right? You're being told, go and find a man. But at the same time, you're living in a system where that's not up to you, right? In other words, you know, I have a problem with that sort of the proposal, because it's done as a gift to a woman. So you're under pressure to find a man, but at the same time, you cannot, if you ever said that you walked up to a man, you would be vilified. You would be told, how can you be so cheap? You have to let the man come to you. But what then happens if the man doesn't come to you? You're being told, go and find a man. So I just think that there's a lot of pressure on women. And also, of course, there's the body, right? Because I think, you know, for women who want to have children, there's a sense of time.
Yeah.
You know, there's a sense of time. And again, it's not, you don't have control over it. And society is judging you for it. Do you know?
A former lover who we stayed friends, I was telling him that, oh, by the way, next year I'm looking into freezing my eggs. He spat out, what the hell do you mean by that? What do you mean, like, you're not old? I'm like, yeah, but you know it has an expiration date, right? You don't know that the older, younger I am, the more, but it's like, I don't understand it. I thought he's only 40, you know what I mean? You're not 40 yet, are you? Like, did you lie to me? I'm like, okay, relax, just do your homework. And like, the refusal to learn about women's body. I mean, you talk about it in the book. It's like, it's not a crime that I'm going to. Would you relax?
Yes.
You know?
By the way, darling, you know, actually, the sooner the better.
Mm-hmm.
So freezing eggs should happen when you're younger, not when you're.
Anyway, Chimamanda,
this friend of yours, I need to talk to him because I think I have a question for him, which is the question I have for him is why this kind of judgment that he seems to have, right? I think it comes. Does he understand?
Yeah, I said he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
And
there's a kind of arrogance that comes with that kind of ignorance. You know, listen to the woman you need to understand where she's coming from. You need to understand where she is.
Right.
You know?
They don't know. And again, it's typical. There's no time. They're in my ears. We gotta go. So I wish there's time. Please give me time. But I have a rapid fire question session that I do have to ask you. So I'm going to ask you very quickly, very, very quickly. Number one, book you've reread the most.
Oh Lord. I'm blanking. Maybe Arrow of God.
I trust as much. Popular hibiscus for me. Literary heartbreak, character or book? A literary heartbreak for you. Because you've broken our hearts. We need to know which one is yours.
There's a scene in a novel called Aniel's Ghost by Michael Ondaatje that made me cry and cry.
Oh, I'm going to find it. Blank page or reader expectations, which is scarier for you?
Blank page by far.
One dream you still count?
I can't tell you.
You gotta give me something, just something. Please.
Being healthy enough to raise my boys.
And that's one. 3 words to describe dream count.
True. Melancholy. Funny.
True, melancholy, funny. Exactly. Chimamanda. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You left us for 10 years. Do not leave us longer anymore, okay?
I'll try.
Please. Her essays have sparked debate. Her fiction has stirred emotion. Her voice has become a compass in literature, in thought, and in identity. And now, after more than a decade away from fiction, she returns with Dream Count, a novel that is as intimate as it is sweeping, as politically elegant as it is emotionally raw. In a world that often rushes past nuance and forgets how to listen, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie reminds us of the power of storytelling, not just to entertain, but to challenge, to confront, to comfort, and to connect. Her gift to us is a meditation on memory, womanhood, silence, and the dreams we bury and the ones we dare to resurrect. It asks us to sit with discomfort, to honor the voices we often ignore, and to remember that even in stillness, there is power. This has been Literati, and once again, I am Judith Atibi. Until I come your way next time, keep reading. Bye for now.